Hi there, welcome to World Watch with Joven. My name is Joven Hundle, and this is the second edition of my show World Watch with Joven here on Central Valley Talk. My first one was back in January, and I plan to make this more of a recurring show here at Central Valley Talk. So the purpose of my show is to provide a youth perspective on different events, different trends, and developments going on in the world, with a particular focus on the Central Valley. And yeah, just kind of provide a youth-oriented perspective on these different important little issues. And so, firstly, right now, March, April, it's college season for a lot of high school seniors, which will be me next year. All these seniors now are finding out which colleges they got accepted into, and they're planning on visiting those colleges, deciding which ones they want to actually attend in the fall. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about college and college admissions at large. So starting off, just a quick little blurb on why you, or perhaps your kids, should attend college. So there's also definitely a rise in technical and vocational skills recently. So if you know that you want to go into welding or construction or something like that and you find a technical school, you can definitely go straight into that field. But for a lot of people who don't know exactly what they want to do in the future, or there isn't a nearby technical or vocational school for what they want to do, colleges should definitely be the top choice. If you look at the statistics then, the average household income for college graduates, even if there's just one college graduate in the family, is thousands of dollars higher. And in addition, the unemployment rate for college graduates, is far higher than it is for people who did not graduate college. So we can see from different statistics and trends, also higher paying jobs and just more jobs in general, we can see that it definitely is a worthwhile investment to attend college. And then so what colleges you want to attend and how to get into these colleges then is a whole different story. So first, let's start off talking about public versus private universities. So public universities have far larger student bodies, and they're far cheaper than private universities. Private universities, they have a lot less students, so maybe only a few thousand, or for the even tinier ones, less than 1,000, but they have more one-on-one interactions with teachers. So for each professor, there might be as little as 8 students in a class, whereas for a public university, there could be even a few hundred people just in one class. And however, these private universities then do cost far more than public universities. There's a lot of different balances and decisions you have to make here. Admissions-wise, so if we look at CSUs, so the biggest public universities in California, there's 20 or 30 of these CSUs, ranging from Stanislaus State to Fresno State to Cal Poly to Humboldt State. So for a lot of these schools, it's a sort of algorithm that determines whether or not you get into them. So they'll take your scores on different standardized tests, they'll take your GPA, all your grades, and then if you meet the required numbers, then you can join those universities. So speaking of these tests, so there's the SAT, the famous one, administered by the College Board. So the SAT, which is out of 1,600, there's 2 separate scores as part of the 1,600. There's a score out of 800 for the reading and writing section, and there's another score out of 800 for the math section. So the math section, there's 2 more sections within that. There's a calculator section and a non-calculator section. For the reading and writing sections, there's again 2 sections, one of which is all about writing. So they'll give you different passages and you'll have to talk about fixing the grammar or making these paragraphs flow smoothly and that sort of thing. Also spelling, punctuation, all those sorts of things. Whereas the other writing and reading section is more focused on the reading aspect. So they'll give you the same sorts of passages and information as before. However, this time it's all about reading comprehension. So they want to see, do you understand what you're reading? Do you understand what different words mean in context? Are you able to then draw different conclusions from these paragraphs and passages that you're reading? And in addition, they also might throw a science passage at you with different graphs and diagrams, and then you have to bring in a little bit of your science knowledge in with that. And then once you have your score out of 800 for the reading and writing section, as well as your 800 score for the math section, that combines to make your 1600 score, and there's also an optional essay. And a lot of colleges do require you take this essay. However, other colleges do not require you take this essay. So the essay is out of 24, but it has 3 different scores of 8. So it has an 8 score in reading, 8 score in writing, and 8 score in analysis, and then combined to make the score out of 24. And the essays typically, they give you a persuasive piece, and then they ask you to write an essay about how the author of this persuasive piece used different literary techniques and writing syntax devices to craft their argument. So the common ones are ethos, logos, and pathos. So ethos, an appeal to credibility. Maybe the author talked about all his different accomplishments. Maybe they're an expert in the field. Pathos is an appeal to emotion. Maybe the author is using language that really resonates with us at an intimate level. And then there's logos, an appeal to logic. So maybe this author is using evidence and logical arguments to make you believe their claim. So then you have to write an essay analyzing this author's piece and talking about maybe the ethos, logos, pathos they use. Maybe they used imagery, detail, all those sorts of things to craft their argument. You have to then write an argument about their argument. And then you get your score out of 24. And so that's what the SAT is. And there's different ways that you can study for the SAT. So most people take the SAT in either their junior or senior year. And so in their sophomore and junior year, a lot of high schools administer the PSAT, a practice SAT, where you can kind of get a feeling of where you're at, maybe what areas you need to study on, what do you need more work on, what do you maybe not have to focus on as much. And so this PSAT score, if you take it in your junior year as well, this PSAT, you also get entered into a national merit scholarship if you score highly enough. So you can even win some scholarship money out of that. And then so another standardized test that a lot of students take is the ACT, which is out of 36. And then so it has a lot of different individual sections, which are also out of 36. So you'll have a essay section, you'll have a writing and reading section, you'll have a math section, and they also have science section where you have to analyze graphs, analyze data, all that sort of thing. In addition to these standardized tests, which are administered outside of schools, there's also the new SBAC test that's popping up in high schools, largely due to different Common Core standards that are now federal standards. So the SBAC, which replaces the old CASI here in California, helps high schools determine whether or not their students have learned enough material to graduate from high school. So if you get a high enough score on the SBAC, then you'll be right on track for your high school diploma and hopefully then to college. So I myself just took the first part of the SBAC as a high school junior last week, or a few weeks ago, and I'll be taking the second part of it with my school in a few more weeks. And so the SBAC is, again, just all about your basic high school skills that you need to be learning, and so then you can, apply them into different contexts and increase your skills in these fields in college. So, for example, I took the English section where we had a lot of reading comprehension, a lot of grammar, and then we had to write a small essay. Soon I'll be taking the math section, which, all about math. Mainly a focus on Algebra 2 and that sort of thing. And then so all these tests, the SAT, the PSAT, the ACT, the SBAC, so their scores will then go on your transcript. And then when you're applying to college, public universities, especially CSUs and UCs, will have different computer algorithms where they'll put all your scores into this computer, and then it'll tell these college admissions officers where you rank in comparison to all the other people that apply to those colleges that year. So if you rank highly enough for that specific college, then you may just find yourself there that next fall. And so studying for a lot of these standardized tests, there are a lot of free resources out there that people can definitely take advantage of. So, for example, libraries. Libraries will have all these different prep books known as Princeton Review books or Barron's books that might focus on a specific part of the SAT, like the math section, or they might even have entire practice tests, so you can simulate an SAT or you can simulate an ACT and, again, kind of get a feeling of where you're at and what you need to improve on. In addition to these in addition to these library resources, you can also go online to free websites like Khan Academy. So Khan Academy, which actually partnered with the College Board, the company that administers the SAT tests, they have these free resources now where you can do sample questions, you can learn different concepts, and then Khan Academy, this website, depending on your scores in these sections, what you like to study, will start recommending even more resources. So maybe if it finds that you're lacking in skills in a specific math area, or you need to work on sentence fluency and grammar more, then it'll recommend different little activities and sample questions so that you can get ahead in these fields. And so in addition to all these, the PSAT, SAT, ACT, and SBAC tests, there's also some other less publicized tests that can also help you get into college. So there's AP tests. So if you go to a high school that offers different AP classes, then you can take this class, and at the end of the year, in lieu of a final, your teacher might recommend you take the AP test, which is out of a score of 5. So then you can get, a passing score is 3, 4, or 5, and then if you get a 3, 4, or 5, a lot of the universities will then recognize that, okay, this student took an advanced placement course, that's what AP stands for, showing that he or she is college ready. And then when you go to that school, they might even give you credit in that subject, and then you won't even have to take that class at college, saving your parents a little money in the process. And another standardized test besides the AP test is SAT subject test. So this is a test that's also out of 800, and it's about one specific subject. So chemistry, or physics, or math, or English, or history. And then so you get your score out of 800, and if it's high enough, again, these colleges might not have you retake an American history class or retake physics once you go to these colleges, if that's not your main major. So yeah, all these standardized tests, they really provide colleges a way to compare your student against the thousands of other students that apply to them. So it might not be a perfect system, but it is a way for colleges to compare different students and see which one is right for their school. And CSUs are the colleges, the California State Universities. These public universities really focus on test scores. So they'll look at how you compare in this test score. So for example, on the SAT, if this person got 50 points higher than you, then they might get in over you. So these CSUs use these as a way of comparing other schools. And then UC's, University of California's other public schools, as well as different private universities, they also use these test scores. However, they also want different extracurriculars and activities. So, for example, they might want you to join different clubs at your high school. They might want you to even become the ASB president of the school, or secretary, or treasurer. Or in these clubs, you can join clubs about subjects that you're passionate in. You can even found a club at a school if you'd like, get other people to join, maybe become in the leadership for those clubs. And that can really show to a college then that this student is passionate about this field, they're involved in different things at their school. I think they'd be a good fit for this university because they can keep studying different resources and take classes about their passion. They can major in these fields and then hopefully later on get a job in these fields thanks to their education here at our universities. Besides clubs and other extracurriculars, colleges such as UCs and private schools might also want you to join sports or do community service. So these are another great ways of making yourself look more appealing to universities, and again show that you're a well-rounded student who's involved in different activities and would be a good fit for their school. So for example, these clubs, there might be Relay for Life, which is a big one at my high school, Turlock High School, that has about almost 100 members, I believe, who hold a yearly 24-hour sort of running and marathon charity event to raise money for different organizations, and breast cancer awareness is a big one. There's clubs like Math Club that go out and compete in math competitions. There's one at my school known as Junior Statesmen of America, which is all about increasing civic engagement with youth and teaching them about different political issues. And so you go to different fairs and political summits and talk about different issues and get a deeper understanding of these issues when you talk to different experts in these fields. There's also clubs like Key Club, which is all about volunteering, and there's clubs like MediCareers at my school, which is all about later pursuing a career in the medical field. So these sorts of clubs, if you join the ones you're passionate about, if you join the ones that you're maybe interested in, so for example, MediCareers, even if you don't necessarily see yourself going into medicine, you can still join a club like this to maybe determine, just to make sure that you don't want to go into this field, and also show to colleges that I've been looking over all my different options, I've decided this is what I want to do or this isn't what I want to do, and that sort of thing. And then again, you can join different sports like track or basketball, football, that kind of thing. You can partake in community service. So community service at my school, they actually require it. So sophomores have to do 5 hours of community service, juniors have to do 10, and I believe seniors also have to do 10 hours of community service throughout the year. But in addition to these numbers, you can also do extra community service, go above and beyond, not only to help the community, but also to show these colleges how prepared you are for attending college. Another great way to enhance your college application is to partake in different summer activities. So there are a lot of different camps out there where you can determine something you're passionate in. And for example, if you want to go to a computer science, computer programming and coding camp, if you want to take and attend a camp about physics or math, if that's your sort of thing, you can go to these camps and then show on your college application that, hey, I attended these camps over the summer. I showed a willingness to continue learning and pursuing different things that I'm interested in, and kind of use that as a way to show that, I didn't really spend my summer just forgetting about everything. I definitely had my fun over the summer, a nice little break from school, but I have a passion for learning, I have an appetite for learning, and I satisfied it that summer by taking these camps about these different fields. And then also along those lines, you can take a university class. So a lot more universities now are offering classes to high school students, and even sometimes to junior high students, in different fields to just make them more acquainted with these subjects, to give them a leg up, and hopefully to develop and foster a sort of passion amongst these students within these different fields. If you show on your college application that you're really interested in a specific field and you've done all these activities and programs to show that you are passionate for this field, then you maybe have a greater chance of getting into a different specific major, a specific program at these universities. So for example, colleges like Brown University or the University of California, San Diego, they have specific medical programs. So after you complete your bachelor's degree, you don't even have to then apply to a graduate school because you're already in this fast-track program that Brown and University of California, San Diego have. So it's like a 6 or 7 year program where you particularly focus on medical and science, biology sorts of classes, but you also have the freedom to go around and take any other classes that might interest you now that you have the opportunity at university. So, for example, then if you make your application medical-centric, hopefully you can get into one of these programs that'll set you on the fast track to getting the job that you eventually want. There's other universities that may have similar programs for law degrees or computer science or that sort of thing. So if you show in your high school career that you're committed to these fields, then hopefully that'll help you later on. And another similar thing I'd like to talk about is if you're interested in, say, computer science, coding, programming, you can choose to go to a college that's in Silicon Valley or right near these technology companies, so that maybe during the summers they'll look to these companies will look to these colleges for internships. and you may be able to get those opportunities. So, for example, in Silicon Valley, if you go to a college there that's near, say, the headquarters of a major corporation, and you major in computer science, you have a greater chance of getting an internship at these universities. A big example is in Washington State, where Amazon and Microsoft are headquartered. So Amazon and Microsoft take more college interns from local Washington colleges than they do from, say, Ivy League schools like Harvard or Yale or Princeton, or schools like Stanford. So even though in name and in ranking and programs, other places might consider these colleges to be higher, you actually have a greater chance at an internship if you go to, say, Washington State University, right next to Microsoft or Amazon headquarters. A similar thing is if you're interested in a political science internship at the United States Capitol or a specific representative, if you go to Washington, D.C. University, something around there, then you have a greater chance of getting these opportunities. So there are a lot of different factors and variables that go into determining what college is right for you, what colleges I can get into. But once you do your research, once you figure out what you want to do in life, there are a lot of different ways a lot of different things that you can pursue that'll help make your life easier in that regard and get you on the fast track there. Another summer activity or even school year activity that you can do to make yourself more appealing to colleges is different sort of businesses or entrepreneurial activities. So just a lemonade stand, a car washing business where you wash your neighbor's cars, or that sort of thing. Even though these might have nothing to do with your grades or academics or what you might want to pursue in life, even though this might have nothing to do with that, it still shows to colleges that you have this sort of passion, that you have the traits of a hard worker, of a responsible person, and that these colleges would be lucky to have you in their schools. And then so once you get into these schools, a problem for a lot of people is the high cost of college tuition here in the United States. So there are a lot of different scholarship programs out there. So if you go to a private university where the cost is far higher, even though the cost is far higher, a lot of these private universities will then have different programs that are ready to help you with financial aid. So if your parents' household income reaches a certain number, is a little under these certain numbers, then they'll provide you with different financial aid options. There's also different programs like the California Scholarship Fund. So if you get a high enough GPA, grade point average, so basically high enough grades in high school, then you'll automatically be entered into different scholarship programs by your school. So then if you keep up these grades, if you enroll in these different programs, then you'll have the opportunity to win different scholarships to help you pay that college tuition. There's also other resources out there. So for example, on the popular ABC show Shark Tank, where different millionaires and billionaires will hear entrepreneurs pitch their product and then invest in them, there was one specific product on that show a couple years back that really took off. It's an app called Schollly, Schollly. So it's a paid app. I believe it costs $1, where it compiles and aggregates all these different scholarships out there, and then you can enter in some details about yourself. So, okay, I'm this grade, I'm this many years old, this is a field I'm interested in, these are some of my activities, this is what I've done, and then this app will go out there and look for scholarships for you. So maybe they might have scholarships for a particular race or ethnicity as well. And then so once you put in your details, it goes out and finds these scholarships for you. So it makes it a little easier for you. You don't have to spend endless hours on Google or any of that sort of thing. So then it'll give you these scholarships. It'll show you where to apply for these scholarships. And then hopefully you can earn these scholarships to help you pay off your college tuition. Another important topic related to college admission is your college essays. So college essays they're very unpredictable. So you don't necessarily know what the admissions officers at these colleges are looking for at any given point in time. So they're not going to be like your typical essays that you write in English class, where you'll have like a 5-paragraph structure. You'll have your introduction, you'll have 3 body paragraphs, and your conclusion. So they're not necessarily like those sorts of standard structured essays. These colleges have different prompts, and so they might ask you to talk about yourself. They might ask you to talk about a different experience that's really left its mark on you. They might want you to talk about your passions, about different skills you have, about different intellectual abilities you have, or just anything else that you want to say about yourself or any other experiences that you've been in. And so, for example, the UCs, the public colleges, University of California's, they changed their application to have 8 different essay prompts, and then you have to answer 4 of them. So, with a specific word count. So the word count is a maximum of a couple hundred words. I forget the exact number off the top of my head. So once you answer 4 of these prompts, then your essay is sent through. So they don't just look at your activities and your grades. They're also going to want to see how did you respond to these essays. So different schools have different things that they're looking for. Some might not take the essay into as much consideration as others, but others do. So for example, the University of Chicago, one of the top schools in the nation, they're known for their very quirky essay prompts because they really want to see how this student thinks. So for example, they've had a prompt in the past, define water. And that was it. That was the entire prompt, just these 2 words, define water. And they wanted to see, okay, so when the student sees this weird 2-word prompt, how are they going to react? What are they going to type out for us? So I'm sure they got a lot of different interesting responses that year. Another interesting prompt that they've had in the past is find X. So that's usually, a math problem that here's an equation, find what the variable X is. But this University of Chicago, they put it as one of their essay prompts, find X, and then they want you to write a 500-word essay on it. So different colleges treat their essays a little differently. University of Chicago is a bit of an outlier in that regard in the way that they treat theirs. Another interesting topic to talk about related to college admissions is college interviews. So college interviews, it's mainly private universities that conduct these interviews, reason being that public universities usually have far too many applicants. So for example, UCLA this year, University of California, Los Angeles, had, I believe, over 100,000 different applicants. So they can't take the time then to, interview each one of these applicants. But a lot of private universities that have less people applying, these colleges can take the time to interview a lot of their students. So in these college interviews, they might ask you things about you, what you're interested in, and they'll also ask why you're interested in that college. So why did you apply to us? And so in these interviews, one thing I've found, I guess you can compare them to job interviews as well. So in any type of interview, I think one thing that's important to note is that if you come from a public speaking background, you'll definitely be better suited to partake in these interviews and hopefully have a good interview. So public speaking is definitely an interesting topic. So I'm a junior currently at Turlock High School, and freshman year, I joined the speech and debate class. So speech and debate, it really helped me to kind of open up. I might not even be sitting in front of you here today talking about all this stuff if it wasn't for speech and debate. So the different skills that I learned, these public speaking skills, the standing up in front of people, giving a speech about some political issue, that's not an everyday occurrence. But the skills that you learn from speech and debate or any other public speaking programs or that sort of thing, they really do stick with you for life. So even if it's just in a normal conversation, or if, for example, I'm in a class and I raise my hand to answer a question. So public speaking skills, they help you in a variety of fields. So again, in these college interviews, job interviews, and everyday conversations, public speaking is a great way to sort of teach yourself not only to open up, but how to conduct yourself, how to get across your point better. So even if you have something great to say, you might not know what the best way to say it is. And so public speaking programs can help you a lot with that. So whether you're a teen applying for college, whether you're an adult, these public speaking skills will come in handy for you. And so, yeah, I just thought a lot of these different topics relating to college admission were definitely very topical now in April and March when a lot of students are getting back their college admissions letters. And while college juniors such as myself and parents of high school students are anxiously looking towards these college admissions dates, I just thought this would be an interesting conversation to have. And hopefully you guys all learned a lot from this. Hi there, and welcome back to World Watch with Joven. I'm a high school junior. My name is Joven Hundle, and this is the second edition of my show, World Watch with Joven. And for the first segments, I talked a lot about college admission. So an interesting little trend and development that's going on right now with a lot of high school seniors getting back their college admissions letters. And now for the second part of my show, I'd like to talk about different agricultural and environmental issues that are on all of our minds here in the Central Valley. So the 2018 midterm elections are coming up in November, and so we're going to be seeing a lot of different news headlines until then about polling and predictions, talking about, oh, I think Democrats can win back the House of Representatives and the Senate this year, or, oh, I think the Republicans will be able to hold on to these. I'm going to be seeing a lot of these headlines for the next couple months, but I think it is important that we not only focus on federal politics, but also on the politics that affect us most. So the state level and even municipal level are probably the biggest way that ordinary citizens such as us can get things done in today's political climate. So we just have more of an influence, more of a sway over these local politics, and then the decisions that are made at the local or state level will also end up affecting us more. A decision at the federal level might not affect everybody just because if you think about these legislators at the federal level, they can't always make a law, a bill, a policy that will be able to help people in all 50 states. So, for example, California, and especially the Central Valley, we're very focused on farming. But, for example, a state like Maryland might not be as focused on these issues, so a policy made at the federal level affecting all 50 states won't be as efficient as it needs to be for Central Valley farmers and citizens. So if we look now at the local and state level, there are a lot of different agricultural and environmental issues that we should be talking about that definitely affect us. So the first one being the whole concept of organic foods. So we see famous grocers like Whole Foods, which was recently bought by Amazon for billions. So Whole Foods is an example of a company that was built around the whole concept of organic foods. So they're known for selling health foods, for pretty much only selling healthy foods. And they built themselves around this idea. And there's definitely other grocers, other companies who also pride themselves on being organic and being healthy. But the problem with this, the word organic especially, is what exactly does organic mean? And so there are a lot of different definitions here. So some argue that the word organic should just mean that there's nothing synthetic going on, that these are not genetically modified organisms, there weren't any pesticides, and these are just completely natural products. Whereas other people say that that's too low of a bar, and that organic foods should mean different soil types, different fertilizer types, different processes, different agricultural processes that will make these products the best they can be. So these definitions do differ a little, and there's a lot of debate at the federal level, at the United States Department of Agriculture, at the Food and Drug Administration, and then as well as here in the States, there's a lot of debate on what organic should mean, especially because there has been a sort of backlash against organic foods recently, just because it's known that people will buy organic foods more than other foods just because of the word organic. So they think that they're getting something healthier, and they might be, but that's not always a guarantee that what they're getting is healthier. So we might see, without a clear definition of what organic is, we can see big businesses and corporations possibly taking advantage of consumers. So they might be branding all their products as organic, and so the consumers think that it's one thing, but perhaps it's a completely different definition of organic. And so the consumers are buying something that they actually don't want to buy. So that's why it is important to get a clear definition of what organic is. So then farmers will know that, okay, so here's the validation that I need to show that, okay, my food is organic. Or other farmers might realize that, okay, if I want to be growing organic products, this is what I have to do. And so once we get a clear definition of what organic is, then we will be seeing benefits for not only farmers, but also then consumers who know what they're purchasing. Another important agricultural issue is GMOs, so genetically modified organisms. So genetically modified organisms, it's a pretty big topic. So their purpose here in the Central Valley, here in the United States, is a lot different than their purpose elsewhere. So for example, in Africa, where feeding concerns are always an issue, there's a lot of starvation there. So there's products such as golden rice, which is easier to manufacture, easy to grow, so that they can get more of this golden rice so they can feed more people in Africa. So in Africa, it's really more of a starvation question, that how can we get the most crop available for the least amount of money while still getting all the nutrients that these people need. Whereas here in the United States, it sort of is still about that getting the most amount of crop for the least amount of money and still getting these nutrients, but it's not necessarily from a starvation perspective, that if we don't get it, we're going to starve. It's just from the perspective that we want to get healthier, we want to get cheaper, but we also want to get as a bountiful a harvest as possible. So we see a rise in GMOs in crops such as strawberries is a big one. So people will selectively breed different strawberries that are genetically modified so that they will have a bigger harvest and they will be able to sell more, and hopefully these will also be healthier. So the debate here is whether or not genetically modified organisms should be labeled. So some people argue that there needs to be, some sort of sticker or some sort of warning on products that say that these are genetically modified. However, other people argue that this sticker is useless just because it creates a needless sort of fear around these products, even though these products might be perfectly safe. Whereas the other side, again, is saying that consumers have a right to know what they're purchasing. Whereas, again, the other side is saying that it really does not make a difference. So it is an interesting debate, just because if you think of these genetically modified organisms then, so farmers are deciding that we only want to grow these sorts of products in a way that has sort of been happening for ages now. So we'll see if a farmer, for example, if we're still talking about strawberries, sees that, oh, these strawberries that I planted over here are way bigger and I have more of them than I have over here. So he's going to use the seeds from the side that has these bigger, more bountiful strawberries. He's going to use those seeds instead of the plants that didn't turn out as well. So in a way, the sort of selective breeding has been happening for centuries, thousands of years, but genetically modified organisms are also, genetically modified. So they have been engineered in a lab to grow in a certain manner, to be consumed in a certain manner, and then the farmers will come in and selectively breed. And so, speaking of the farmers themselves, there is the farming climate is changing a lot. So, obviously, right now there are less farms than there were 100 years ago. But the more important issue is that these farms, there's a lot of consolidation. So many of these farms are now owned by large corporations that these farmers are specifically growing crops for these corporations and not, say, selling them after. So the farming climate is sort of changing there. So a lot of times the farmers themselves don't necessarily have the final say. So if they do work on a farm that isn't owned by them, they are subject to the whims of the corporations that they work for. So if the corporation is saying that we want to grow this genetically modified crop, and the farmer is saying that I don't want to grow this genetically modified crop, the farmer's still going to have to, since he is growing it for the corporation now. And more consolidation is still happening all the time. So there are a couple companies that are buying up a lot of different farmland and then going from there. And so, yeah, these GMOs, an interesting topic, and we might see this come up on propositions, statewide propositions in California, or maybe even just local ones, saying at this farmer's market, we are going to mandate that there has to be warnings about genetically modified organisms. This could happen on a local level like that. This could happen on a state level, but also it could happen on a federal level where the Department of Agriculture or the Food and Drug Administration come out and say that, yeah, we're going to require you label GMOs. Or no, maybe the federal government's not going to require you do that, but again, the state or a local level might have you do that. So if it does happen at a federal level, it most likely will be one of these organizations like the Department of Agriculture, so not necessarily elected officials. But if it happens on a state level, it might be a proposition appearing on the ballot, so you do directly vote that, yes, I want these labeled, or no, I don't want these labeled. So it is a matter of how the electoral process will work out for GMOs, whether it's going at, again, the state or the federal level. It could happen in a federal institution like Congress, where we do vote directly for these representatives, and before the 2018 midterms, obviously you can ask the candidates what their stance is on this issue. So it can be a direct action that then Congress might make a law regarding this, but more likely, just like with the aforementioned definition of organic, it will probably be left to the Department of Agriculture or the like if it is done at a federal level. Another important environmental and agricultural concern is natural disasters. So the 2017 hurricane season with Hurricane Marta, with Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Irma. So that was the costliest hurricane season on record. So it caused hundreds of $billions in damages. And obviously here in the Central Valley, we weren't affected by these hurricanes directly, but there are other concerns, other environmental concerns here in California. So in Napa, in Napa Valley, as well as in Southern California, there were the wildfire season. So another extremely devastating natural disaster occurrence that caused tons of dollars in damages. And then the most important one here in the Central Valley would have to be the drought. So California's drought did officially end around a year or two back, but there are signs that we could be heading for another drought. So sometimes it's not even necessarily that we don't have enough water, it's that the water we have isn't being utilized as best as it could be. So maybe it's being used in different types of soils and crops that are using too much water, leaving other crops and soils to not have enough water. Maybe it's a problem with irrigation. Maybe it's a problem with government allocations of this water and how exactly they distribute it. So these are issues that can definitely be solved through an electoral process by farmers here in the Central Valley. So if we make our voices heard, if we vote people to, for example, the California State Assembly that reflect our views, reflect our perspectives on these issues, maybe these representatives are farmers themselves, they can definitely provide a unique perspective on how this water should be distributed so that we don't end up in another drought and that we have enough water for our crops. or again, these wildfires or the like, to make sure that we want to limit the chance of these happening as much as possible. But with something like the wildfires that we may not be necessarily able to control, then we want to make sure that there is specific funding set aside so that farmers who maybe don't work for the big corporations like I talked about earlier, maybe individual farmers, we need to make sure then that there is state funding so that these farmers aren't left high and dry, that they can regain the lives they had, regain their farms. So we can vote on different propositions. If a proposition like that ever got into the ballot about how funding should be allocated to different relief programs for farmers, that's another big agricultural and environmental issue that we should be keeping an eye on to see what will happen with that. And one last big environmental and agricultural concern that I want to bring up is the farm to school program. So I live in Turlock, California, where the Turlock Unified School District actually does have a pretty large farm to school program where products from individual farmers will find their way into lunch programs at schools. So maybe in the pizzas and the burgers on the side, a lot of for the sides, there will be a lot of crops that were grown just miles away from the school. And we'll see those in the product. We'll see that in the schools. So that helps not only students by teaching them about the area that they live in, it also helps farmers with the steady source of revenue, these schools, that they can sell their crops to. So even though my city, Turlock, does have a pretty large farm-to-school program, number one, I don't think that's standardized across all of the Central Valley or the rest of the state. But another big concern is, I've noticed, for example, where I live, you can't go 2 miles without seeing an almond tree. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but there are definitely almond trees all around. Blue Diamond in Modesto, just 20 minutes away from us, is a huge employer and huge co-op with these almonds. But I've never seen, for example, walking through my high school in the cafeteria, I've never seen any of these Blue Diamond almonds or almonds at all in our school lunches. So as a side, they might have mini salads, they might have tomatoes, carrots, but I've never seen almonds. So I think that almonds or these other crops, we could definitely be expanding our farm to school programs in my city, Turlock, as well as the rest of the Central Valley, so that we can show, I guess, the culture of our region and reflect that within our schools. So this is something that, could require state funding as well, which, again, is something that could be included on a proposition on a ballot. And so speaking of these propositions on ballots, I've been talking about them a lot, but the way to make sure that your proposition is found on the ballot is by getting enough signatures. So if we can get the signatures of enough farmers, of enough Central Valley citizens to sign their names to these propositions, then we can get them on the statewide ballot in November. And so when you're collecting these signatures, if that is a goal you want to pursue, you can make sure to note to any interested people that that signing this proposition doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to vote for it in November. It just means that you'd like to see a discussion, a debate around this important issue. So you just want to see this on the ballot so that us, the people of California and the Central Valley, can come to a consensus. So you just recognize that it is an important issue that needs to be talked about. Even if you may not necessarily vote one way or the other, you can still sign this to get the proposition on a ballot. So we've seen in previous years, so 2016, 2014, with all these propositions on the ballot, not many of them are Central Valley or farmer-centered. So whether it's the legalization of marijuana that just passed, or things having to do with gay marriage or the like, these aren't necessarily issues that plague farmers on a daily basis. And I actually can't even think myself of a recent agricultural proposition I've seen. So that may just be a population concern, that the Central Valley with the lower population can't get enough signatures to get their issues on the ballot. But it is definitely a cause that we should be pursuing, because for so long a lot of our issues aren't really reflected in the agendas of politicians. It is time for us then to step up and make sure that our voices are being heard and that these issues are going to be solved. And so, yeah, I thought these were just some interesting environmental and agricultural concerns and issues that I thought were worth bringing up, and I hope you guys learned a lot from them. Hi there, and welcome back to the second ever edition of my show here on Central Valley Talk, World Watch with Joven. So in the previous segment, I talked a lot about different agricultural issues and how they relate to politics and the electoral process, and how we can hopefully find some resolutions regarding these issues. And so now I wanted to talk a little bit of environmental issues and reflecting on the past year, 2017, a little bit. So in 2017, especially conservation issues. So in 2017, there were a lot of different species, I believe around 80, that did go extinct. So there was the fishing cat, a lot of different species of bats, as well as a lot of different species of lizards. And then there's also famous animals such as the cheetah, facing even more extinction issues. So here in the Central Valley, we don't have cheetahs, for instance, but there are definitely a lot of ways that we can help conservation efforts. So, for example, when we think about a kid growing up and they see all these different animals around them everywhere, so in books and stickers, toys, that sort of thing, they'll be seeing all the popular animals like elephants. They'll be seeing elephants, tigers, lions, all these sorts of animals, a lot of which are facing conservation, facing endanger and extinction, those sorts of problems, but they do have a large enough platform already. So if we want to save any animals here in the Central Valley, or in California, or just the rest of the United States that are facing extinction issues, I think one example that we can turn to on how to raise awareness of extinction possibilities, one example we can look towards is the bald eagle. So the bald eagle, the national bird of the United States, it's on so much of our national products. So we will see that on the seal. We'll see that as a mascot for a lot of our national parks, that sort of thing. And so the bald eagle, which was facing extinction just a couple decades ago, the way that we got it out of extinction, so right now it's doing completely fine. It's not endangered, it's not even threatened, or even vulnerable. The way that we got that out of extinction territory is by making sure that they were kind of omnipresent. So for these kids growing up, they'll get stuffed animals of these bald eagles. They saw all these different efforts in schools to raise awareness of the fact that the bald eagle, the national symbol of the United States, was facing extinction. They simply rose awareness of this. And so once more and more of the populace realized that the bald eagle was going extinct, there were a lot of different efforts. So whether it was just straight up donations, whether it was different things taught in school about the bald eagle and conservation efforts, we saw a nationwide effort to make sure that the bald eagle didn't go extinct. And so for different animals here in the Central Valley and California and the rest of the United States that are facing extinction, I think a big way that we can get people all across the Central Valley, California, and the United States, a big way that we can get them to make sure that this animals doesn't go extinct is just by raising awareness of the fact that they are facing extinction. So from there, we might see donations coming in, we might see different expeditions and programs to reintroduce these back into the wild. We might see different efforts at zoos to promote these animals, and we might see consumer boycotts of different animal products. So for example, for a non-American example, when you see elephants or rhinos, So poachers target these animals for their tusks, which have ivory in them. And so these ivory products, people are now starting to boycott them just so that poachers can't sell as much of it. And if poachers can't sell as much of this ivory, then they'll hopefully stop poaching the elephant and the rhino, and we'll see greater numbers of these animals. We also see a lot of backlash against taxidermy. So taxidermy, the act of stuffing dead animals and hanging them in your house, hanging them in museums, that sort of thing, it has faced fire recently because, again, of these poaching efforts. And so proponents of taxidermy say that this animal died under completely natural conditions. They weren't killed to be sold by these poachers or that sort of thing. But the problem is that when people are still buying these products, even if they're obtained legally or sort of like, it does create a market where poachers realize that there is still money to be made. And so we have been seeing a lot of backlash against animal products, taxidermy, that sort of thing, which again all stem from awareness and raising awareness of animals facing extinction. So whether it's starting from kids in schools, whether it's starting from zoo visitors and people who see these animals on a daily basis, that sort of thing, there are a lot of different awareness efforts that we can undertake to make sure that these animals don't go extinct. And with that, I'd like to finish my second edition of my show World Watch here on Central Valley Talk, and I'd like to thank you guys all for watching, and hopefully you'll tune into my third edition.
CentralValleyTalk.com